I first got involved with football at school, in fairness, and used to play for the county. I then in later years, I was with Mitcham District League, playing for Southwark Tigers. And then I came across to Fulham Foundation to set up their social inclusion department and run programs like their Kicks, which is a sports-based inclusion program, and other initiatives run through the Premier League, charitable fund, and other outside funders and council, Merton Council and Kingston Council. That was my introduction into the football world. Before that, I was just into youth work. Using sport, I used to engage with Millwall and get FA Level 1s delivered for our young people in Southwark. So the concept was there, and this is back in 2000, 2001, 2002. So yeah, so my proper introduction into the football world was when I really went to Fulham FC Foundation. While at Fulham, I engaged with the local county FA, which was Surrey. I think my first piece was around, I think there was a conference being delivered, and I ran a workshop around working with at-risk young people and using sport as a tool to engage young people. I then sat on at that time it was called the Race Religion subgroup as a member, and enjoyed that area of work, realised that there was a lot of work to be done around equality and inclusion in football, and subsequently became the chair of that group and began to help strategise and plan how we were going to meet inclusion targets across the county. That was my first kind of taste of the other side, the administrative side, the governance piece in terms of football. And then as a result of that, I was recommended to go on the board programme, which is run through the PFA and the FA, which is about getting professionals and ex-professional players onto more boards and, you know, becoming directors and having more of an influence in the boardroom. That was very challenging. I was doing that, I'd done that with, may he rest in peace, Ugo Ekiog was one of the members of that cohort. Chris Houghton, the ex-Brighton manager, was on my cohort. Troy Townsend, Kick It Out, was on, Rachel Yankee, and a number of other players in the game, managers that have been in the game. It's time to understand corporate governance and governance structures and processes, and how to do that in terms of good governance and high quality governance. And it was designed, the whole program is designed to diversify the boardroom anyway. So each year they have different cohorts coming through. So that gave me a different view of governance in football, and actually gave it from a position of being BAME background, what I may face in terms of challenges at that level if I was to get an opportunity. So qualified, had a ceremony, I think it was at Wembley. Subsequently after that, Surrey came knocking for me to apply as a board member. I was absolutely chuffed, to be honest. Took up the challenge, and you know, I was the first BAME member, trustee in Surrey at the time. And I think my role models growing up really were the players that were, you know, I used to see. So the first one that comes to mind for my own reasons is John Barnes. But then you have Cyril Regis, Vince Hilaire, Viv Anderson, etc. Those kind of guys were the guys that were breaking through into the game. Didn't understand some of the dynamics that were going on that I was watching on Match of the Day, particularly Cyril and those guys at Watford, I think it was at the time, and some of the kind of discrimination and, you know, negative impact that the crowd was having on them at that time. I didn't fully understand it as a kid, but now I can make that link back to those guys were trailblazers at the time. They were the guys that paved the way. Now we have a team with 50% BAME and an England national team, which is 50% BAME. And I remember the days Viv Anderson walked out on that pitch for the first time. You know, so it's come a long way in that regard. In terms of governance, to be honest, there wasn't enough role models around that, and I think being a part of a cohort on the board program brought me into contact with people like Chris Houghton and so on, which you can say are role models in what they do. But it seems like we were all on the same journey. So we have to recognise that we become the role models for the next generation coming up and through in terms of governance. So for me, the moral piece is to pave the way for others and to dispel perceptions and stereotypes that people may have consciously or unconsciously about BAME individuals and what they're about. I would say know why you're going into it. Be clear as to why you're going into it. It should be a personal preference, that you have a love for the game and a love to make a difference in the game first as an individual. Then the second piece becomes the piece about being BAME, you know, from a different type of background from what is traditionally a game which hasn't had that level of representation. So with that second piece comes a responsibility to represent BAME communities in the right way so that people can understand, you can break down the ignorances and the perceptions. You can only do that from the inside out, really. You need to be in it to influence change rather than trying to do that from the outside in. So I would advise them to firstly go into it for the love of the game and for what you want to get out of it as an individual, but understand that you have a responsibility of paving the way for others, and take that on board. Get a support network which can give you balanced views on things, and that you can bounce ideas or even challenges and barriers. So have a solid network around you. Yes, is a straight answer to that. Whilst playing, particularly, but in the governance side, it's about unconscious bias and genuine ignorance. Like it's not vindictive. So this is a society. We live in a society that, you know, we've had issues around race for eons, for a long time, for decades. You know, we all know where it kind of stems from. It's a global issue. It has its roots in, you know, I don't think you need me to give you the history of, you know, where racism comes from or discrimination comes from, but, you know, it's about power and control and so on. And, you know, if you're aware, I think the first thing is about acceptance of that. Accept that there is an issue and it's going to permeate through different professions and different industries, including football. I think, the most that I've experienced was whilst collecting data for equalities. I won't say where, because I've done it in several places, but there was one occasion collecting data through a survey and getting responses from supporters to equalities issues. And some of those responses I got back sent a chill down my spine in terms of the attitude, views and opinions of some supporters in regards to this issue of equality. And I think it really hit home that we're only scratching the surface here, but actually this is more of a societal issue. It's not necessarily a football issue. This is more about society generally and how people are raised, you know, what ideologies they have around that. When you can understand that and understand the game's been around, you know, over 100 years, then it's going to be embedded. We're not going to get to the root of this overnight. I think sometimes there's an expectation that football should shift very quickly to the new reality in society's diverse, multicultural approach. But you've got to remember that change takes time, and if we've had 100 years of doing things a particular way, then it may actually take 100 years to undo that way of things. You with me? Not 5 or 10 years that we've had where this is now kind of, center stage in terms of equality and so on. So I think we need to be a bit more realistic in our approach. Continue to do things, steadily chip away at it, but don't expect too much too soon. I think they're doing more now than they ever have. So the answer to that is they're doing what they feel they can do. There is more that can be done, yes, but if you are asking me, can they do? Is there more that they can do? Well, I have to look back 10 years at what they were doing then, and then look back another 10 years at the state of the game in terms of equality then. And if I'm looking in that context, then they're trying, they're doing what they can do. They can do more. These aren't small machines and organizations. These are huge organizations with, big media machines, comms machines behind them, huge sponsorship deals, and a lot of money floating around the game. So from that perspective, I think there can be more that can be done by the football community. I think we have things like kick it out and days and weeks of action, fine. Is that really having an impact that we want? Is it bringing in more coaches into the game? Is it bringing in more BAME managers into the game? Is it bringing more people into the governance of the game? I'm not sure. But it is raising the issue. So it's highlighting the awareness of the issue. I think practical things like the on the board type program, which specifically targets BAME communities to train them up to be able to hold their own in a boardroom, is the way to go. If you look at things like what's happened to the England squad recently, what they had to undergo and go through, then I would suggest these are high profile players. You can get all the players involved in the game too. They're role models to thousands, millions in fact, of young people. If you run a season campaign around that, you've got campaigns that are running through the season around mental health, for example, in partnership with some huge organizations, influential orgs. Why can't we be doing that to specifically targeted at changing the face of or the landscape of football governance? There are opportunities within that for BAME individuals to be involved. Let's not forget the power of players themselves coming together in a union to say, actually, we are all on the same page here. And I'm talking about players talking the same language as the pundits. You with me? So, everybody's aligned because it's very full of opinions. Everybody's got something to say at the moment. And what we need is a unified strategic approach to this, where a consistent message is going out from governance through to the game, the playing of the game. And it's a consistent message going out there and backed by all the big players, sponsors, partners.